and we're doing a hybrid information session on the budget. Just as a reminder, we have a number of all of our past budget presentations. All can be located on our Mendon-Upton website. And when you click on the button that says budget right on the main page, it brings you there. And then on the left-hand side, you can see all of the presentations we've been giving budget presentations going all the way back to December. And this is our second info session tonight. And we'll also be presenting, or I guess answering questions at a Town of Mendon budget information session tomorrow. And then we'll also give updates at the Monday, May 4th school committee meeting. And then we'll be heading into the first town meeting, which takes place on Thursday. And so what we have is a presentation that we'd like to quickly run through. And then once we run through the slides, we can open it up to any questions that people might have in the room or what people might have at home. And then we'll just go from there. So we appreciate you tuning in. All right. So starting off with our budget, and I don't know if anyone has seen any of our prior presentations yet, but you know, some things will be the same, and then we have some updates to some information too as we go through. But all of our budget is grounded in our strategic plan, and we are in our third year of our strategic plan. It's a 5-year plan, and we have 5 main priorities that we're focused on: deeper learning, high quality curriculum instruction, equity, inclusion, well-being, community support, and student performance. We added this year in order to have a more focused lens on that. But when we develop the budget, every decision we're making is filtered through the lens of our strategic plan and what is best for our students. I always like to begin with highlighting what our successes are in the district, and we are an exceptional school district. We have a comprehensive strategic plan I just referenced, and that plan has led to improved outcomes for students, along with lots of external recognition that we've received over this past year and you know, many previous years as well. Our mission is to empower all learners to thrive. At every grade level, we're invested in our students' current and future success. And our plan, when we're bringing forward this budget and every budget, is to sustain that success for our students and our community. We have a great pictures here. We have a strong start in literacy taking place here, leading all the way up to deeper learning experiences for our high school students interacting with community members. We often in our presentations will talk about the return and your return on your investment and your tax dollars that are going to work for us in bringing proven results for our students. As an example, we've had noticeable growth in our 5th grade ELA writing proficiency, jumping 10% over the past year. Part of that was because of some investments in staffing as well as high quality instructional resources. We've had a focus since the pandemic, and this is nationwide, on reducing chronic absenteeism. And because of our increases in some of our counseling supports, as well as some data tracking systems that we have and programs that our staff have been able to put in place, we've had significant reduction in our chronic absenteeism. And finally, just another highlight, we actively go out to seek competitive grants and have many entitlement grants as well that we go after as well. And that brings in additional revenue that helps us to expand and grow programming for our students and community. On this slide, we have many of the highlights where we've shown up in Milford Daily News and been interviewed online in TV shows. We have excellent outcomes coming as a result of our work here. And recently, even coming up on this Friday, we have our science symposium. We just announced the elementary principal of the year, Liz Garden. We have the Massachusetts athletic director of the year. But our students, we could go on and on with all of the accomplishments that our students and our staff are achieving every day for all of you. I couldn't have a budget presentation or any presentation without highlighting all of our students and the various programs that we offer here. It really is the student experience in Mendon-Upton that makes us very special. And we have students who are going through our system and leaving and being really successful when we're able to head out into the world beyond. But you can see just some representation of some of the programming and deeper learning experiences that we're providing here. With all, starting off talking about how great we have great teachers, we have excellent education and instruction taking place, all the things I've just talked about, but we're at this critical juncture where the communities are going to need to make a choice whether or not they want to continue to invest to sustain these strategic priorities and have continued improvements that we've been adding to every year and improving every year, or if the path will be a reduction in services if we're unable to get the funding that we need. And we'll speak to that a little bit more distinctly later on. So why do we need an override? It's really pretty simple. The cost of operating school districts is growing at a faster rate than the 2.5%. For raising the levy for taxes, as fixed cost increases are outpacing this revenue. Mendon-Upton is a complex organization. You may not be aware, but we have more than 400 employees, and it meets the needs of approximately 2,000 students. We're going to speak to the main fixed cost drivers of healthcare, special education, contractual wages, and also some of the other fixed costs that are driving the gap, which is larger than we've had in any of the previous years. Turn this over to you, Jay.
Okay, thanks for joining us tonight. We've got some unprecedented fixed costs that are going up in this year's budgets, things that we don't have a lot of control over. 3 of them are the main ones that are pushing us. Those are health insurance premiums, contractual obligations for salaries for all the employees that work for us, and mandated special ed services. We also have some utilities and other, building costs that are going up that are just part of the cost of living right now. More specifically, health insurance is going to be up about $1.7 million, salaries about $1.5 million, about a little under $1 million for special education services, and about $500,000 for some of the transportation and utilities. This is not a challenge that's unique to the Mendon-Upton district. This is a state funding issue. It's being impacted all over the state, the school districts everywhere. It has to do with how the state funds public education and their requirement of putting that burden on local revenue. Healthcare is our biggest factor this year. The market rates for health insurance is around 20% as an increase. We're looking at a 23% increase in our premiums for next year to keep our current coverage. This is something that's just happening due to a lot of claims and just the way health insurance is going and trending this way. This is a national issue as much as a state issue. It's not a local issue other than the fact that we fund the table. Special education is another issue. It's going up by 29% on a state average level. Tuitions for out-of-district placements are going up. There is a reimbursement program called Circuit Breaker that does help offset some of that cost, but the offset is nowhere near growing at the rate that the cost of these programs are growing. So we kind of have a choice now, cycle where we either have to cut programs or increase revenue. It's one or the other. When we look at state aid, you can see that bottom line, total state aid for the school district this year is going up $185,000. So put that against the health insurance increase of almost $1.8 million, or salaries going up $1.5 million. $185,000 isn't going to do much. It's a little over 1%, 1.23%. Chapter 70 is our main funding program. It's only going up 1%. Transportation is going up 1.2%. Charters, tuition and reimbursement are both going up, but not at the same rate. We're going to spend around $400,000 for charter tuitions because we as a district pay for all students that go to charter schools. If you kind of look at the growth rate over the last 11 years since FY16, we have a less than a 1% growth rate from state aid. What this is really trying to show you is that the state is not going to bail us out in this situation or any future situations for that matter. It's a fairly low rate of growth. It's because they're not sending funding to communities like Mendon-Upton right now into our school district. Prop 2.5 is another issue that we have to face, and this is a local town issue as much as a school district issue. Towns can only increase the revenue that they have coming in to pay for town services, which school district is part of those town services, by 2.5% a year. That's not a lot of an increase when the growth rate is 4 to 6% a year as far as cost of running the school district, cost of running the towns. And police departments, fire departments, DPWs, all this falls into that, and it all has to stay under 2.5%. That's no longer a viable option anymore. This is the law that we all have to live on. As far as local revenue, there's limitations. The towns can't just come up with money on their own, that we just referenced Prop 2.5. Mendon, over the last 11 years, the growth rate to the school for funding has been about 1.6%. Upton has been about 2.6%. Upton has more students, which is part of the reason for that. But again, this goes back into Prop 2.5, where they can only raise rates by 2.5%. And we have costs going up, 23% in premiums, other costs that are just increasing at a much faster rate of growth.
This is something that is we have many communities that are looking for overrides, and this is a statewide trend. And actually, there's been what they're calling a surge since 2020, since the pandemic. And it's because of the convergence of inflation and expired federal relief or reductions in federal relief and outdated state funding formulas, which we've been speaking to. And successful districts view overrides as something that's necessary as periodic investments to reset that revenue baseline. So if you look at the top, you have some past historic overrides that have been passed by communities that look at this and are very successful communities academically and what they're able to provide to their students. When I just want to point out too, we're not alone in our region. I go to lots of meetings with superintendents in our, local region and also across the state, and we have many neighboring communities that are also pursuing continued investments in their school systems, and some of them are listed right here, many that are neighbors right next to us. One question that comes up often is, we know that committee came forward with capital needs projects last year, something that we were working on for a number of years in order to bring forward to the towns. A lot of that was triggered by our need to have the replacement of our roof, but also some of the time that had been spent on some of the field improvements that were needed as well, that we spoke to last year. We've had some questions on what's the difference between the funding for the capital projects versus what's an operational override. When we're looking at the capital projects, maybe these images help a little bit just to kind of explain some of the differences. It's focused on this one-time source of capital and funding for that replacement or HVAC systems, and it's really focused on that facilities, and it's one-time funding. It's not something that recurs forever. There's an endpoint to it. When we have an operational override, which is something that both towns are coming forward with this year, that's to focus more on our day-to-day operations of salaries, benefits, utilities, educational materials in order to continue to operate. We've also been asked, did we know if we were going to be coming this year, this next year? And there are two answers to that question. We've been talking about the fact that at some point within these 5 years, and in our last 4 budget presentations, we knew that the gap was going to keep getting larger. And we were hoping that we would be able to not have to come forward this year, except this year, we were hit with these unprecedented fixed costs, which is the reason why we had to come the year after capital. We didn't know that we'd be hit with some of those larger costs. We were hoping that we might be able to go another year or so, but unfortunately, we were unable to do that. So something that people may not know, we have been bridging this gap. I talked about this structural gap that grows over the years. And for example, last year it was about 1.7 million at the time in March when we came forward with the budget. The year before it was $1 million. The year before was a little bit less than that. And over the years, we've been closing those gaps by using grants when we're able to, and also making reductions in staffing and in programming. And so I have some examples on this slide here to show how we've made reductions and reallocations of positions in order to not come forward to the communities for an operational override need for as long as we were able to. Something else that we've needed to do is use some of our reserve funds. And so we have been using our funds, and we try to have a 7% goal. And you can see with that 7% line here in the image that we're reaching a point where we cannot use any more of these funds to go longer. And any further cuts or reductions, we can't do that. It would harm students, which is why we're coming for the budget request that we have this year. It's really important for people to know 4.1 million in cuts would completely dismantle our school district, and it would take years to recover, and it would scale back all of the progress that we have made through our last 3 strategic plans, the third one that we're in the middle of right now, going back to when the last time this district had major cuts, which was close to 2008. Yeah. Right. And so we have slowly been improving and restoring and bringing back to the point that right now I can't emphasize enough how exceptional our district is right now with our outcomes. So this image talks a little bit more in more detail about the high cost of an override failure and the dismantling of our school district in 15 years of progress. I mentioned we had 400 or more staff across many different types of roles. Obviously, our teaching roles are the most significant and impactful for the learning and for our students. We will have more than 70 positions that will need to be eliminated. And there are going to be notifications that are going to be going out soon to all of the members who will be impacted. And there will also be lots of movements in the district as a result. That's going to include teachers, administration, paraprofessionals, ABA techs, counselors, tutors, lunch recess monitors, custodians, admin assistants, nursing area, safety, and any other areas that might be unique as well. What does that do? I'll talk a little bit more about some of those impacts, but obviously that's more than 10% of our staff. It would lead to significant class sizes, increased class sizes in some areas. We have a very strong class size right now, which leads to strong instruction. Those class sizes will go up, from an average of 19 to 21 up to 25 to over 30 in some places. That leads to less individualized supports, and also without additional support staff, that would be part of some of the reductions. That also leads to a teacher having more students in the class, but less students to meet the needs of our students. Because we need to focus on state mandated academic core classes, some of the electives will be impacted and leading to some elimination or reduction of electives. Here we have art, music, library, PE, health, which is technology, just to give you some examples. But in particular, you think of a secondary level of the high school, we have many, electives that are within the core academic areas as well that would be impacted and reduced as a result of less teaching staff. When we look over to the right, where it has reduced student programming, one area, again, that would be impacted for the reason I just gave is advanced placement courses. We have really a well-known Spanish immersion program that we've had for close to 30 years. We will need to make some reductions or consolidations in there, and so less students will have opportunities in Spanish immersion. We've added in some mental health supports in order to help our students with more therapeutic needs or other needs to help keep them in the district and have everything that they need to thrive. Some of those will be impacted as well. We have some funding that goes for middle school athletics out of our operational budget, and that will need to be cut entirely. So any middle school athletics will be fully funded by parents. We have a number of clubs and extracurricular activities that are funded through stipends in our budget, which are a few $100,000 of stipends in order to keep some positions and not have to reduce as many teaching positions. Many of our stipends, majority of our stipends will be cut, which will impact our ability to offer our extracurricular activities. Some examples could be drama, band, chorus, newspaper, Model UN, ski club, student council, yearbook, art club, just to name a few. So then what happens? Then we're beginning to have a continued downward spiral. We're losing experienced staff. We have staff attrition of experienced educators who we have trained, who have carted this culture, who help us provide these amazing opportunities and have been part of our strategic plan and our priorities for a number of years. It also will mean that it'll be harder to recruit highly qualified teachers. We still always do the best that we can, of course, but if we don't have a reputation and are competing with other districts, there would be staff less likely to want to come here in comparison to other districts. Clearly, our student outcomes and our opportunities will begin to decline if we have instruction without the high quality curriculum resources that we have in our budgets every year. That will impact what's happening in the classroom, which will impact our student academic outcomes, and we will ultimately become a less competitive school district for our students. It will probably lead to more increased referrals, special education evaluations, and perhaps out of district supports, which then can lead to increased costs for our district because we weren't able to keep some of the supports that we had in the district if we have to have this loss of revenue. It also leads to a loss of revenue that continues. So families will start to choose other districts by school choice into other districts, which will then funnel money out of our district to other districts. And the reverse will happen. Less families will choose to come here. And we have, we didn't show you the image, but it kind of looks like this, where we have close to 170 students coming into our district, which is funding for us, and only about 38 or so that are going out of our district. And that will eventually swap to the other direction with time as you start into this downward spiral. When you have less students and lower enrollment, then you start to receive less state funding because you receive funding based off of your enrollment. That's one indicator of how you receive funding. When you have to increase fees for families, it also leads to increased burden on our families and also inequities for opportunities for students, because not all students might have and families the financial opportunities to pay for everything, which is certainly something we never want to have, wouldn't support. Over time, the reputation that is solid and excellent of our school district that we have built up over the last 15 years will start to decline, and people move to Mendon-Upton because of our school district. You just have to turn and talk to some of new neighbors and find out the reason why they moved here is because of the great reputation that we have. And as a result, home values over time will decline. So it becomes a shared choice for the communities of Mendon and Upton. State and federal support are not going to save us, and it really the future rests entirely within local choice. So there are two paths. There's the continued improvement, protecting our students, preserving the value of our community, or the path which we've just described in the swift erosion of the progress and excellence we've built together over the last decade. That brings us close to our end of our slides, right? I think we have one more just of information, but we, before I move on just to some facts of upcoming meetings, we want to thank you for your past support. I love being, and the privilege of being the superintendent in this district and the former assistant superintendent being here for so long is I've been able to get to know so many, all of our staff, but so many of our community members and our students, and we have a phenomenal school district and we have great towns that have supported us in the past. So I just want to thank you. The operational right and for meetings and the town election. All registered voters can participate in the votes in those respective towns. This process begins May 7th with a town meeting in Upton, and that will be in the Nipmuc Auditorium. On May 12th, we have the Upton town election, and that's when you go and vote with the ballot vote, that's in the Nipmuc gym. And then on May 12th as well is the Mendon annual town meeting, and that's going to be held in the MISCO gym. In the past, it's been in the auditorium, but they're moving into the gymnasium just to make sure that they have enough space for people. And then on May 19th is kind of the last step in this process, and that's the Mendon-Upton election and the vote, and that takes place in the MISCO gym as well. Anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think we've covered it all.
Okay.
We need people to show up and participate in the process.
So our staff, students, thank you for supporting us, and we'll open it up to any questions if there are any questions online.
Yes, no, maybe. Nice. See no hands raised.
Hands raised.
Okay.
Any questions in here?
Covered it all exceptionally well.
I know a lot of people have seen the presentation many times, which is a good thing. We want people to be familiar with all the facts, and we will continue to, add to this, and we'll post this online so people have access to this, and we continue to make changes as we go, or as questions come up. That's really helpful for us because we're able to then add it to frequently asked questions and be able to be proactive. It's important to us that we're transparent and we're able to provide all the details about our budget process to the community so they can make informed decisions.
Thanks, everybody, for attending and participating in the process. If you have questions, please feel free to email us.
All right.